Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Proper Good podcast. Thanks ever so much to those of you who have been watching and listening and sharing. It's really great. I think it's kind of something in it. It's resonating with people, which is really nice. And if not, and there's something that you'd like us to talk about, then let me know. Drop a comment, send a message about all of those things that you're supposed to do. And we can talk about anything that feels relevant to people, really. I'm Lisa. If this is your first time here, welcome. You're very welcome. And this is the Proper Good podcast. And Proper Good is a programme of support for social enterprises and social economy organisations here in Bolton. And we're hosted by Bolton CVS. That's where I work. And the aim of our programme is to offer support, guidance, critical friend encouragement to social enterprises, all the kind of wonderful social economy organisations that are working in our town to contribute to our economies, make massive social impact. And the aim of the programme is to just help those organisations to thrive and do what they do as well as they possibly can. The aim of this podcast really is to kind of talk a little bit about that work, talk a little bit about what we've got on offer, the support we've got on offer. But more than that is to kind of spotlight some organisations working in our sector in our town, and also maybe explore some of the key kind of hot topics, themes that I hear kind of organisations talking about that we think are important, relevant. And talk about hopefully things that will be interesting to the people that are watching and listening. And that's why I say, if you've got something you'd like us to, if you can think of a guest that you'd like me to speak with, something you'd like us to explore, then do get in touch. I'd love to do that. So today, as always, I've got a wonderful guest joining me. And she is someone who really was instrumental in getting the Proper Good programme to Bolton. She's somebody who's been working in this field for a long time, working really hard to get great outcomes for all the organisations that we support. And she's a really key part of the Proper Good team, really. So I will let you introduce yourself, please.
Okay. Yes. So I am Karen Smith. I am the director and founder of Turn Up the Value, which is my business that I established nearly 10 years ago.
Wow.
I know.
That's going to be a pie.
Yes. I think it's next August time, hopefully. So yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I set up Turn Up the Value after a career in the public sector, working around sustainability initially, and then neighbourhood management and partnership working, coordination across in Oldham and Salford. But I live in Bolton, and when I set up Turn Up the Value, I was really keen to do good work here in the town where I live. So really happy to be based here. Turn Up the Value really is about helping organisations to make the most difference that they can through the work that they do. And it was driven by sort of back nearly 10 years ago, social value was becoming a hot topic. And for someone who'd worked a lot in communities and felt like, how is it that we can really make a difference and make that impact and use the resources that we have available to us to really leverage impact. Social value seemed to be the thing that was going to sort of unlock that. I'd actually come back off maternity leave and was still working at Salford Council, and I spoke to some colleagues there, got a bit of an understanding about it, and various things fell into place. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it because I feel like I can make more of an impact outside of the council than I could in. So that's why I set up the business. It's been quite a journey, but it's been great. And now, as you said, bringing Proper Good to Bolton felt like the culmination of a lot of different things falling into place, and knowing that there was such a strong maybe not strong at that point, but like a nub of a community that was starting to emerge in the social economy. And it was worth putting a lot of energy into it to try and get some extra resources and funding and build these collaborations and partnerships. And several years into Proper Good now, it's amazing to see that it's actually happening, and it's really good to be a part of it.
Yeah. And I kind of hadn't really thought about to talk about this, but I think it would be good because I remember back at the beginning of Proper Good, the sort of the whispers of an idea of what would become Proper Good. I, as a business owner, was part of the Social Business Collective, and there was like almost like a coalition of the willing, really, wasn't there? And I remember kind of, I think around the time that you were starting to have the conversations about what would eventually become Proper Good, my business was kind of closing and I was going off the radar a little bit. So maybe you could just in what was the journey of that? How did Proper Good? Not in huge amounts of detail. It's maybe interesting for people to know, kind of, because I know that this program was like 5 years in the making before it ever went live. So
it started, I think, at least from my point of view, with a phone call from someone from GMCVO who'd heard about the Social Business Collective and the fact that there was a little bit of something happening in Bolton, that we're applying for some funding to the Access Foundation for social enterprise support. We want to involve 4 areas of Greater Manchester. What do you think? Would Bolton like to be involved in it? And at the time, so it was name checking lovely Hayley Hume, who was a director of Starts of You. I think it was Vicky Ramsden from Bolton at Home, and probably maybe Dawn from CVS. And the 4 of us were kind of like having conversations. Could we make this happen? And we decided to go for it with the support of GMCVO at the time. And we went. The first thing I ever did was go down to a conference in Birmingham with everybody from all the different areas, and and at that time we were just throwing our hat into the ring with lots of other areas who eventually got through various rounds, and we were one of the 6. I think is it 6 or 8 across the country?
6, of which Greater Manchester is one, and then there's 4 areas within Greater Manchester.
So there was that was quite a run up, and then it was pre-COVID, and then COVID came, and it was like
that's why I fell out of the picture, because I was running a research program.
Exactly, I know. So there were lots and lots of Zoom calls, and and so things did stall a little bit, but eventually we got it over the line. And first of all, Bolton was selected to be one of the 4 for the GM bid, and then GM was selected to be one of the 6 across the country. So it does all feel like a long time ago now.
But I mean, like, amazing, and I just think it's an interesting bit of context, that, because if you just land on this, it's kind of, sometimes it's good to know the history of something, and actually it was a long time in the making. And I think evidence is there's a lot of love gone into bringing this resource here, and a lot of love still happening to kind of give it the most impact. So
and I'm really proud to be chair of the steering group now.
And it's beautiful that, because life changes and people move on, but you are still the one person who's kind of been in the story from the beginning, which is wonderful, isn't it? Because you've got that historic knowledge, you've got that kind of sense of place of where it all came from. I think that's really important.
And I think
really bring
that vision from the start, that's like so satisfying to see that kind of happening now,
and to not let that get lost, because it's easy to let those things get lost in the kind of day-to-day, isn't it? And I do think we have always been led by this strong vision in Bolton of that what we want to see is a thriving social economy sector. And I think we're, in spite of all of the challenges that the sector currently faces, I think we're sort of doing that. I think we're offering something really useful. So that's wonderful. But you're not only the chair of the steering group, not the chair of the cheering group. You are also one of our key delivery partners and programme. You work with lots of social enterprises, and I'm sure almost everybody that watches or listens to this will have met you at some point, because you are wonderful. You're often the first point of contact for people in the programme. And then what you really bring is your wealth of knowledge and expertise around social impact and social value. And that's what I kind of wanted us to focus on a little bit today, because in our world, in the VCSE sector, the social economy, social impact and social value are phrases that we hear all the time. And I think, and I've been doing this gig for nearly 3 years now, and I still get a bit sort of wrapped up in my words of how, like, what's the difference? Why are they important? So I wondered if you could sort of kick us off with, social impact, social value, what are they and why are they different?
So, this has become a bit of a hobby horse of mine to try and help people to understand these terms.
Not surprised, because it's hard.
It is hard. And, if I'm honest, like, it's taken me a while to, like, properly get my head around it, because you hear different things from different people, and there's a lot of like, I think there's a bit of an air of mystery around some of these terms.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah, I really want to kind of demystify some of that language.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, starting off with social impact, I think social impact is the reason most social entrepreneurs get up in the morning. It's the difference that they want to make. And it's all about the cumulative change over time that an organisation or a project or a set of activities can have on the community. And, you know, people have been delivering social impact forever from philanthropic work hundreds of years ago through to like, cutting edge social enterprises doing really innovative stuff now. It's all about social impact. And we measure social impact usually in outcomes. So it's the cumulative impacts of outcomes over time. And it starts right back from the vision and mission of at the heart of why someone sets up this charity or this social enterprise, and private sector companies deliver social impact all the time too. It's not exclusive to the voluntary sector. So social impact is that the change that happens over time as a result of the activities that an organisation does. Whereas social value is, I suppose, the more tricky one. So social value first was talked about really, as far as I can glean, from around 2012 when there was a Social Value Act and it became part of a procurement system.
Sure.
So there are some levers around social value that are about procurement, commissioning and writing bids and tenders. And I think that took, in a way, social value off at a bit of a tangent, I think, because it get caught up in what people have to account for in terms of procurement. But I've always been part of a kind of school of thought that social value is just about doing good stuff in the right way. And it's more of a general term than just it being about procurement. And so it's very much linked to social impact, but social value is the worth of that difference. What is that impact worth to society?
Okay.
And that's why we sometimes see it with a pound sign next to it.
Sure, yeah, because I know there's lots of systems to track that, isn't there?
Yeah. So social impact is the difference that we make, and social value is what that worth to society.
Yeah, sure. So that might be, the social impact might be Jane increases her confidence by accessing an art group. And the worth of that might be that she doesn't need to access the GP as often because of there's a reduced need for anxiety support or whatever. Is that kind of
that's it. Or maybe she goes on to get a job. So so there's a value to society of her being in an employment, maybe not claiming benefits, etc. And people lots cleverer than me have put literal values on lots of different outcomes in terms of what they're worth to society. And there's lots of research that's gone into some really credible values around that. And that, like I say, putting that pound sign on, comparing that value to what the cost of a project or an initiative was. So you get this sort of ratio. I think for most of the organisations that we work with, social impact is the main thing, really. I think it's even just having not just having that awareness of what actually is our vision and mission. Where are we? Why do we do this? What are our values? Who do we want to work with? Who's going to help us to achieve our aims? What are our aims? All these fundamental questions that need to be asked, because I think otherwise I see social enterprises and other organisations that we work with sort of flying into doing the do without necessarily stopping and pausing and reflecting on some of that foundation information. And that's often one of the most powerful things I do with organisations of all sort of histories, really. It could be somebody brand new who's a social entrepreneur, like helping them to articulate that right at the start. But equally, it could be like an organisation that's been going for a long time and maybe they wrote a vision statement 10 years ago, but is that still relevant now? And often that is like really, really important to them beginning to understand the social impact. And And so measuring it isn't just for measurement's sake, it's to help them to be in control and understand what is it we're trying to do, how are we trying to do it, how does this link to our business planning and our strategy. And also, there's a big drive around funders want to know your social impact as well.
I think that's a really important point that you make there as well, because what we know from working alongside leaders of social enterprises and other organisations is that they're really time poor. Actually, in this current particular climate, the need has never been higher and the funding has never been scarcer. So we know, so it's often difficult for people to kind of find time to come out of working in the business and work on the business. And I think, I know for myself, it's you need to often be really clear about why you're doing something and what is the benefit of doing that, in order to make the time out of delivery, in order to do that stuff that can feel a bit more strategic. So just to pick up on what you were saying then, so say if there is an organisation, say, watching, and they're thinking like, okay, so social impact probably could do to articulate what we're doing, where would you advise someone to start? Like, what's the kind of, I feel like it might be useful to people to know, what's the kind of simplified process that you might take somebody through in terms of looking at how they might gather and measure their social impact data?
So, I mean, always the starting point is thinking about why you're doing this, who you're doing it for, why is it important for you to start to understand and measure your social impact. So what resources will it take for us to be able to do that, and what sort of proportionate for us? If you're a tiny organisation with, maybe, ostensibly like a one person band, then you're not going to have the resources to collect and measure every single outcome that you ever achieve. So thinking it through right at the start is really important, and just considering what time have you got to put into this? What do we actually want to get out of it? What do we need to get out of it? And then reflecting on that vision, mission, values, putting that in place if you don't already have it. And there's some great resources on the Bolton CBS website that'll help you to do that as well.
I was going to say that because even that can be a bit tricky, can't it? If you're new to it, thinking about what's your vision, what's your mission, what's your values, like working out the difference between.
Yeah, and one of my favourite things to do with people is to coach them around that and like help to tease that out of them, because
I've done a session with you. It's brilliant. It's great.
Yeah. Because it's and it's so with anyone, it's in your head, it's in your heart,
absolutely.
So to actually get that out on paper is quite satisfying for people. It's really satisfying for me to see them do that. So that's the starting point, and then it's sort of then building a bit of a framework for measuring your impact. So thinking about, so I follow a methodology called social accounting. Which has been going for a long time, was devised by the Social Audit Network, which is an organisation that I train with and have been heavily involved with over the years. And so that's a methodology and a framework really for measuring impact. So that asks you to think about your objectives. So what are your aims as an organisation that obviously are in line with your vision and your mission? And then what activities do you do to achieve those objectives? And then for each of those activities, what are the outputs or the numbers that you can count that happen all the time as a result of the work that you're doing? And then what are the outcomes of those? So what are the short to medium term changes that happen as a result of the activities that you do? And then sort of more cumulatively, what's that longer term impact? So that social impact that happens over time, perhaps at a community level, or perhaps with an individual, big changes that happen in their lives that are, and that impact will probably relate right back to your vision and your mission. And so it's a framework, and it's sort of a circular kind of process as well, because it allows you to kind of really track and understand and measure literally what is the difference that we're making, and is that still in line with our own vision and mission, and does that do we need to tweak things? Have we been, one of the most things often people say to me is, we've sort of drifted a little bit because we've been led by funding. Oh God, there's funding in this particular area, let's go and deliver some stuff around there. And then before you know it, you're like, hang on, that doesn't really match what we originally set out to do. And maybe you're feeling a bit uncomfortable about that, and it helps you to see why.
Or conversely, sometimes actually you realise, oh, well, because the need has changed, actually the reason is that we've shifted is because the need has changed. And you can go back to the beginning of that cycle, can't you?
Yes.
And rethink, because, things do change in communities all the time, don't they? So it can be, either side of that coin, really, I guess, can't it?
Absolutely. And I suppose that's the kind of the more detailed version of the way you can start to measure it. But in order to kind of capture those outcomes, then you'll need to understand what's the data that you can collect that's going to help you to understand whether you're achieving those outcomes or not. So at the very least, if all you're doing is thinking, these are the activities that we do, how do we get that information from our stakeholders? Who are our stakeholders? Who are the people who we impact or who impact us? And how do we get some information from them that's going to start to tell us whether we're achieving these outcomes or not? So that's why, you're always asked to kind of get some feedback, do some questionnaires. And you don't want that to be like a tick box exercise. You want it to be meaningful. So if that all relates back and there's a kind of a thread running through it, right back to your vision and your mission, then it feels like a useful exercise to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's giving you information that'll feed into you, like I say, your business plan, etc., and your strategy moving forwards. And it's not just something that gets sent off to a funder and you never look at it again.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. Obviously, the methodology that you use is called social accounting, and I think it does have real parallels when you think about financial accounting, because when we talk to people in the program about financials and tracking your financials, however dry and overwhelming that can sometimes feel for people, it's really important because that needs to guide the direction of your organisation. And it feels like this is exactly the same, isn't it? Like you say, it's not fill some surveys in that go in a drawer somewhere. It's actually that data can really inform the directions that you take. And you might, because, much like with money, you could be spending a lot of time and resource delivering something here that actually, when you look at it, actually that's not doing what we think it's doing. It's this bit over there. It's doing the bit that we think don't want to be doing, And it sounds like what you're saying is you can make that process as simple or as detailed as you have capacity for, really, can't you? And if at the very least you start with knowing who you are and what you're wanting to achieve, what you're doing, and who is that reaching and how is he reaching, right, that can actually be quite a straightforward process, can't it? If that's
absolutely. And it could be, a voluntary organisation, like a community organisation delivering some cleanups, or they've got a bit of funding to do X, Y, and Z. That methodology, in a very simple way, can support them to understand their outcomes in the same way as, a big charity, a national charity, do social accounts. And you're right that it's called social accounting. From what I understand, it was born out of a desire for organisations working in the social economy space to be able to articulate their difference in a way other than the money that they turn over, so it's that this is how we account for our social,
like really robustly kind of on the table, as this is a really valuable output of
and you can actually get those social accounts audited by the Social Audit Network if you wanted to get to that point. And perhaps it's a good point to mention that when we're thinking about social accounts, it's that triple bottom line. So it's your social impact, which is a lot of what we talk about, because that's the space a lot of us are working in, but it's also thinking about that economic impact and that environmental impact as well.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to touch back on the environmental stuff, definitely, because I think that's a bit that sometimes gets lost, but so that my brain doesn't go off on a complete tangent, which is liable to do. It'd be really interesting then, so we've talked a lot there about social impact, but I think it'd be interesting to think a bit about social value then as well, because from what you've said, it sounds like social enterprises, have got a social impact baked in. It's the reason that they exist. It's absolutely what they do. But also by default, they will therefore be creating social value. But often the spaces that I hear social value talked about tend to be more of the business spaces that I'm in. Because as in the social enterprise world, you kind of straddle both, don't you? Which is great. You get to kind of see both, be part of both worlds. But I guess I'd be interested in kind of you telling me a bit more about social value and how you think it kind of cuts across both of those kind of sectors. And it feels to me like maybe there's opportunities for social enterprises who have social impact baked in at the core of what they do, maybe help organisations who don't
Mm.
achieve their social value aims? Because I know, so yeah, talk to me about social
Yeah.
value basically as well.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to social value, it's such a movable feast, and I think like
That's why I
it's
get a bit.
it is, and like I say, it's talked about by different sectors in different ways and things. And it's taken me a while to have the confidence to just think, this is what I think it is. Like, and just be kind of have the courage of my convictions around that. But I do think I'm really passionate about the fact that social enterprise, and when I say social enterprise, I mean, trade and charities and all the other organisations that come under that bracket. But social enterprises have social impact baked in, but they also have social value baked in. And when it comes to winning contracts and using social value in the way that I was describing around, so, let's look at the outcomes that you achieve and the worth of those outcomes. Often it's seen as like the additionality of what an organisation does. So if we think about social value in terms of the private sector and where that's come from, and like the corporate social responsibility angle, and do your staff go off and do volunteering, do you employ apprentices and that sort of thing, and that's often the currency of social value in the private sector. And I think therefore other thing, like how many local jobs do you create, how many local organisations are in your supply chain, all those things, that's the currency of social value. So if you're asking a social enterprise if they're looking to win public sector contracts, for example, to say, oh, what's your social value? They're kind of forced to go, you mean we're doing all this really, really good stuff all the time, and that's our mission, and like that, as you say, it's baked into everything that we do, but we also have to do all this other stuff on top. And I just think that's really unfair. And I feel really strongly that
it's a massive challenge to organisations.
Absolutely. So for social enterprise, I think there's a bit of a movement at the moment to help commissioners to understand that there's inherent social value in what social enterprises do, and that by commissioning a social enterprise to deliver something, yes, you might get some of this additionality, but you're getting so much more on top of that. So in that sense, like, I'm really keen to help social enterprises to understand what their social value is so that they can talk the same language.
And I think that's it, isn't it? Like, it's that shared language piece, and we've talked a lot about, because social value is often in numbers, isn't it? It's often a quantitative exercise and talking about worth, and sometimes that can feel a bit disheartening, and you're like, actually everything that we do is so much more than numbers, and actually it's case studies and that rich stuff that often you would use to evidence your social impacts. It's really important. But there is something about understanding and learning that language of social value, because if you are an organisation that wants to perhaps bid for a public sector contract or be commissioned by a public sector body, that's the language that those people speak, isn't it? So I think, that's really a really key bit, isn't it? And just helping people to understand and learn some of that lingo themselves.
And not be baffled by it, because they'll be doing it. You just might not be capturing it or just translating it in the right way. So whatever, but having said that, I don't think the responsibility should all be on social enterprises. I think it should be on the commissioners and procurement. And I think there are changes happening, and there's legislation that's driving some of those changes, but it's not really happening fast enough. And in a world where resources are increasingly scarce, we need to make sure that social enterprises have as much chance as possible of getting a piece of that pie, if you like.
Absolutely. And because I think, as far as I understand it, at its core, the idea of social value, where it's come from, is, it comes from public sector procurement, doesn't it? And it's about making sure that public money, when it's spent in order to deliver contracts and infrastructure projects or whatever that might be, as well as being sort of the most best economic value contract, it's that public money also generates good social value and social impact, doesn't it? So I think it comes from a good place initially, doesn't it? And you think about it's funny because in our world, this is just, of course, there'd be social value and so, but there clearly was a time before that when that wasn't a consideration. There was just a race to the bottom in terms of price. So, it's a great thing, but it's about us kind of helping to lobby and lever,
Yeah.
isn't it, to make sure that it works for the organisations that we support. And
Yeah.
a key bit of that, as you say, is helping people understand their own social
Yeah.
because there's all kinds of systems that you can
Yeah.
as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and like social accounting will definitely help you to be able to do that, and social return on investment, which is that ratio of like what you put into a project. Oh, I know.
Me, my brain doesn't work.
Yeah, and to be honest, like
Those calculations exist, and like you say,
Yes.
somebody cleverer than me is
and me probably, yeah.
figures.
But yeah, they are helpful tools if your audience is someone that speaks that language.
Yeah.
So again, like when you're thinking about going into doing social accounting or impact measurement, if you're thinking about right at the start, who's your audience as well? So am I doing this to evidence to funders and stakeholders, in which case, social impacts measurement is going to be the way to go. But if you want into evidence social value to commissioners, then or to procurement systems, then you perhaps need to start thinking about the language of social value, which and sometimes you're forced to use particular measurement tools like Tom's framework, which is themes, outcomes, and measures, and that's a system that.
Is that what it stands for?
Yeah,
I totally didn't know that's what it stands for. Thanks very much.
Yeah, social value portals sort of tool that it's both, I think, really simple in some ways, but also can get quite complicated in terms of helping people to think, oh, that's an outcome, that's what that outcome is worth to society. I think there's a danger with all those sort of putting a pound sign on an outcome, that they can be oversimplified or, and also like massively over-egged in terms of what that outcome is actually worth, because before you know it, you can be saying you're generating thousands of pounds worth of social value, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah, and I think it's funny, I was having a conversation about this in some other work this week about sometimes when you're doing a piece of work, certainly when you're starting a piece of work, you don't necessarily know what that will be, what that financial value will be, because you don't necessarily know what the change will be. So often, like in community-based work, you talk about it, you basically throwing a stone into a pond and you never know what the ripple will be or where it lands, and so sometimes you can't know, and it's tricky, isn't it? Because I think there's definitely a value in organisations understanding that language and being able to do that. But then with that comes then an expectation that everything will be able to have this pound sign attached to it. And sometimes you just don't know, do you? Because some organisations are working in communities in a really long-term way with a real long-term view, as they should be, because that's actually how you generate change. So I guess it's kind of finding the spot that feels right for your organisation, isn't it? And your mission and what feels useful at that time.
Yeah, what the blend of different approaches and ways of measuring that feel right to you. I think you touched on before about those collaborations with the private sector, and I think that's
interested in that because you said like often social value can be the language of the private, and if you think about, you've got big, in Bolton Town Centre, for example, at the moment, there's loads of town centre regeneration happening. All of the construction companies that are doing that work will be private companies, and they will have a responsibility to generate social value alongside, as part of their contract. And so it feels like maybe there are opportunities for social enterprises who have the impact baked in to collaborate there. Like, what does that look like? Like, where are the opportunities for that?
Yeah, I think there are definitely opportunities, and social enterprises, if they can put themselves in the right position to match up with what the private sector organisations need, then it's a really powerful opportunity. But I think that's where the tricky point comes in terms of how do social enterprises go about delivering what they do. And then private sector organisations, or the classic one that we've always kind of come across in Proper Good, is that I remember being told by a construction company years ago that what we really need is a catering company, because we would love to commission a local social enterprise to do all our on-site catering for our contractors and things, but we don't really have a social enterprise caterer, or well, I don't think we do anyway.
There might be one in the wings. I've had a conversation, but no, we haven't. You're certainly right, we haven't had one.
So it's how can we support social enterprises to consider what those opportunities might be to be part of private sector supply chains, but also like how can there might be volunteering opportunities or ways that the private sector can support with skills that the social enterprise sector needs. You know, the again classic one that we always talk about is, why would you have a group of people coming in painted from the private sector painting a community centre when the HR experts or the social media experts? So matching some of those skills, but also understanding that this isn't a one-way street, and that social enterprise have a lot to offer to the private sector as well. So, you know, maybe in doing some volunteering in a I don't know, a forest school or an outdoor nature site or something, you know, there's well-being opportunities and sharing some of the skills that naturally the VCSE sector is really good at having, you know, and helping private sector to understand communities better. And so there are ways and there are kind of examples of where that's worked really well, but there are also lots of examples where it's just missing the mark a little bit. And it's almost like there's so much potential for huge amounts of like social value to be generated from those collaborations, but we've not are good enough yet at matching those things up.
And I guess that's a challenge to you and I and the people that we work with, isn't it, in kind of creating those spaces where we bring both sectors together in order to talk about what they might need. And I think what you said there about that kind of it not feeling like a one-way street, you know, it's not social enterprises coming saying, can you help us? It's we can help you actually in lots of ways. And I was just thinking then about, you know, like we don't have a caterer currently in our network. Then if you're a social enterprise caterer in Bolton, please get in touch. We'd love to hook you up with some opportunities. But when you think about a lot of our enterprises are in the health and wellbeing or education and skills space. When you think about large construction companies, all of their employees have got families, they've all got mental health needs, wellbeing needs, physical health needs that actually, even if it's not directly related to the contract that they're delivering, there are organisations that can come and help you understand your staff team better, help you with your staff retention, help you, you know, improve your staff's kind of experience working there. And as you say, the one thing that social enterprises have in spades is lived experience and in the communities that people are working. So just that bit of being able to understand the place that you're in and what the need might be is massive, I think, isn't
Absolutely.
it? And there is, in Bolton, we have the Bolton family, don't we, which is a kind of networking collaboration space looking to bring those two sectors together. And we're all kind of, everybody involved with that is thinking about how we can sort of get the most out of that space, aren't we? And I'd be really interested if anybody's watching or listening who wants to be involved and that's got any ideas about how we can maximize these opportunities for both sides, because we all just kind of want the money that's flowing around our town to benefit our town, don't we? That's
and how that's guided by strategically what is good for Bolton. And you know, it's that thread running through. So you know, Bolton has vision priorities, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Which I don't know if they're still being refreshed, or I don't know where things are up to.
State of refreshment.
It feels like that.
They should be, I guess, really. Those kind of documents shouldn't be stagnant, should they?
Yeah, but there are priorities and a vision for what will make Bolton a happier, healthier, more cohesive place, etc. So it's like then thinking about how does everybody work together to achieve those priorities, but also to achieve the best from each other, and like it's just joining it all that up is something that all boroughs are, you know, I've been over to Stockport recently and I've been up in Lancashire, Preston. Everybody's trying to grapple with how do we because resources are dwindling, how do we make the most efficient use of them, and not just in terms of cost effectiveness, but in terms of the social value that we can create through all these opportunities that do exist. It always comes down to me to collaboration, and if
it's got to be that bit about don't work harder, work smart, and that's collaboration for me always reaps the biggest reward, really.
There's an example of a collaboration that is quite a basic one, really, but I do love it because it shows how like different organisations can play a part. So part of my history is working as a consultant for the Woodland Trust. So I helped to develop social enterprise community at the Smithills Estate. I'm one of those organisations with the Forest School, and you know, supported them to get established and grow at Smithills on the site there. and they started to deliver the HAF program on a lunchtime. It's free, giving lunches to children in receipt of free school meals, wasn't it? But during the holiday period,
activities.
So Forest School activities wraps around that. So really cleverly, that Forest School used the HAF provisions to provide free at the point of access activities and lunches for people. But there was also a normal holiday club, Forest School paid for, running along at the same side. So that in itself, I felt was like a great outcome for a social enterprise, because they're bringing different communities together with different perspectives. And we linked in with a local school in Brakemet who identify some young people who would attend the Forest School, but obviously Brakemet's a bit far away from Smithills, so we needed to think, well, how can we transport these young people? So a public sector organisation said, well, we've got a minibus that we're not using in the school holiday, so you can have the minibus and the driver, but we can't afford to pay for the fuel. So a private sector organisation stepped in to pay for the fuel.
Wow. I didn't realise that had all come together. That's amazing.
And the HAF program, which was a public funded program, obviously provided the school lunches, and one of the biggest outcomes that I've ever sticks in my mind is that because of that program and all the different people chipping in and working together, there were a group of young people from Brakemet who went into a Forest School place that they'd never have got the opportunity to go into before. And this one quote from this young lad who was like, I didn't know you could climb trees. Like, I'm allowed to climb this tree. And they're like, yeah, you can climb that tree. And he went from being terrified of being in a natural space like that to just absolutely loving it. And he didn't want to leave at the end of the day. We did write a case study up about that at the time. But I just thought, what a beautiful outcome, like all those people working together to try
to give those kids that amazing experience.
And that's the sort of thing that can happen when people have conversations with each other and work together towards the same goals.
And I think there's something in that about, you've said it a couple of times, like, this stuff can feel really complicated, but actually it's quite simple. And actually that's all quite, it's like, I just want to be able to bring this group of kids from over here who don't get to access this thing to this thing over here, and I just need somebody to help me do it. Actually, that's dead simple, isn't it? And then it's just about writing that down so that you can tell the story. And I want to shout out, because I know who that organisation is. That's Forest Frontiers. That is an organisation who operate in Smithills and in other bits of Lancashire as well. And I in a different lifetime, I did some different kinds of work, and I remember delivering a session on that Forest School. It was a beautiful group of kids, like, so really mixed, from real mixed backgrounds. And we just were absolutely bloody loving being in a Forest School for the day. It was gorgeous, but I didn't realise that was what happened behind the scenes.
And that's another point, actually. So that's Forest Frontiers, our lovely Amanda. So she realised that what a nice opportunity this would be. I've got a bit of budget because I've got this HAF funding, so I could pay other social enterprises to come in and support that.
Always does that.
And like, it just gives me goosebumps actually, just thinking about that. That's it. That is social value, like, in a nutshell. And no matter how you measure it or what pound sign you put on it, to me, yes, it's social impact, but that is social value, because that's worth such a lot.
Absolutely. And you could break those outcomes down in so many ways, couldn't you? But it's worth so much. Those your people to their families, the cost of them eating at the site, the improvement in their health and well-being, the clean air, the exercise. There's just tons and tons, isn't there? What a beautiful that. I'm really glad you gave that example. I was transported back to your little Forest School session there. It was I loved doing that work with Amanda. Which sort of brings it. So you've touched on earlier on around the triple bottom line, which is a phrase that we hear sort of talked about a little bit, and that refers to that as a social enterprise, you're not only interested in measuring your economic output as an organisation, but also your social output and your environmental output. And it feels like we've kind of come back to that as we arrived in Upland there. As I was thinking about it a little bit. And I notice that for some organisations for whom perhaps environmental stuff isn't at the front of their vision, mission, values, isn't the main bit of what they do, but that's the bit of those three that can get a little bit lost sometimes. And I don't think by any stretch that's because people don't care about their environmental impact. I think they really do. I think everybody does, actually, if we scratch at the surface. But it's not always the easiest bit to kind of deliver on evidence. But we know it's important. You know, the phrase net zero is in pretty much every conversation that you have. You know, we know that it's important that we all think about our impact on the earth and the environment. And I wondered kind of, and I know you said at the kick-off that you had some experience in sustainability, and I know that you do. Let's not pretend I don't know it. So I wondered kind of, I thought it might be interesting to just spend a little bit of time as we're kind of coming towards the end of our chat, like thinking about that a little bit, about environmental stuff. Where does that sit within kind of social impact and social value? And kind of I've got a sense that it's important for organisations to think about, but it might be good for us to, you know, talk a bit about why. And kind of what can organisations do if it's on their radar of, oh, we've not really thought about that much and we probably should, kind of how can they start to do that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, I just wondering where to start. Yeah. So I think what came straight into my mind was just to say, again, this is about me thinking there's a whole world of stuff out here around environmental impacts and sustainability, literally. And what does that actually mean to a small social enterprise that's trying to do the right thing? As a sense, as you say, that something around measuring impacts around the environmental, you know, reducing environmental impacts important, and sort of a pressure that we should be doing all these things, and like, do we need to attend this massive training program, or what should we be doing? And I think I realise increasingly that I'm just driven to like simplify things for people.
Listen, it's a very hard thing to be driven by. I'm asking for doing
I think it's because I often see things in quite simple terms, and I get frustrated when I see things kind of overcomplicated, because it just puts another barrier in place for people. So so a lot of this thinking that I'd been doing started with a conversation at the Green Summit a couple of years ago, which is a summit that Andy Burnham hosts that brings people together across Greater Manchester with a concern about the environment. And I attended a workshop that was about the journey to net zero, as in carbon net zero. And there was all these different people in the room, and it was like, oh, if you're a private sector business, go on this table. If you're a I don't know, if you're a public sector business, go on this table. If you're an education institution, go on this table. And I thought, where do the social enterprises go? Like, where do the small businesses go? Because it was all about helping people to understand what tools were available to them. And I remember just having a chat with someone who was like, not really much out there for small businesses or social enterprises, because again, it's about being proportionate. So you might not need to sort of evidence have net zero targets, or like, I don't know, have all these massive ambitions around, you know, this big impact that you can have, but you might feel a responsibility and a sense of trying to do the right thing, and a sense of wanting to make that a good business decision as well as just the right thing to do. So so I kind of, and this is a bit about my personal journey, starting as a sustainability officer at Oldham Council, working on the Eco Schools programme and my master's degree in environmental policy, and always been a bit frustrated in my career that I wasn't able to bring that back into the work that I did. So it just felt a bit like, when I had those conversations, like, oh, this is the thing. This is the way I can maybe try and do something, you know, and tap back into that purpose for me. So I just started having lots of conversations, one of them with you and with Bolton CVS, thinking about what could we do to support the sector around this. And so we devised this really simple tool called the Sustainability Check-in, didn't we? And then so we piloted that with some social enterprises who were part of Proper Good and other organisations in Bolton. I've done a bit of piloting elsewhere as well, in London and Stockport. And just sort of honed that. And then there's been this opportunity to be commissioned to deliver a sustainability toolkit now.
Yeah, well, tell us a bit about that, because I think tell us a bit about that, and then I want to ask you a little bit about kind of the implications of it for organisations.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about the toolkit. Where's that one to?
Yeah, sorry, I think I've gone off topic.
No, you haven't at all, and I want to know about it.
So there's just, I'm just trying to plug this at every opportunity.
Go for it.
That's what it is. So yeah, Turn Up the Value's been commissioned to develop a sustainability toolkit for the VCSE, voluntary community social enterprise sector in Bolton. So this is something we want as many people to get involved in as possible, and it's not really I'm not going to come in and say it's going to be this, this and this. It's something we want to co-design with the sector, but what we think it will probably entail is some training and support to help organisations understand what do we even mean by sustainability, how does that relate back to your what you do as an organisation, and what opportunities that might lever to have a better understanding of that. And I think that's where perhaps we were getting at with the, actually being aware of your environmental impacts and having an environmental policy in place or a sustainability policy is something that's increasingly being looked at by funders and commissioners.
I think so as well. And I think, and again, I have a huge amount of detailed knowledge around this, but I understand that the requirements for small and medium-sized organisations to report on this called Scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, aren't they? But it basically means what your kind of environmental impact is, what your carbon output. I think there's going to be an increase in responsibility for organisations to have an awareness and be able to report on that stuff, isn't it? So it feels like really timely that this piece of work has landed to try, and it feels a bit in exactly the same way as we were talking about social impact and social value, kind of, if we can help organisations to understand in a proportionate way what that stuff means for them, so that they've got that shared language. If you're looking to bid for a contract or you applying for some grant funding,
I think it's trying to help sort of again find that sweet spots between the push factors of yes, this is something that you need to be doing from a legislative point of view, and it's increasingly important in that way, but what is it what the pull factor, what's driving you in, and because as a social enterprise, as you say, from my experience, most want to kind of do the right thing and have a feeling like, are we doing enough? Could we be doing more? How could we work together? So again, that collaboration, how could we link with other organisations to try and share ideas, develop shared projects, and just find those innovative ways, because this isn't a problem that's easy to solve by any stretch. And it's not something that I do believe it's not something that is the responsibility of our sector solely, because we already do so much and we already work so hard to support communities, but there's such strong links between social justice and climate justice, and those two things coming together to make sure that the burden of the changes that are going to happen in our world over the next 100 years don't fall so heavily on the people who are least able to kind of adjust and adapt. So there's so many reasons why the VCSE sector is, and it's such an important part of this. And when we have the finger on the pulse of communities, you've already said.
I think that's it. And I know that through some of the work that you've said that there was some pilot work over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. And I think one of the things for me that I saw you draw out of that was that bit about people power and collaborative voice. And I love what you said there about, social justice and climate justice are completely interlinked. And what we don't want is for the effects of climate change to, rest on the people who almost have the least resources to be able to combat it. And so there's something about that collaborative voice and that coming together and that shared kind of community action that our sector is really uniquely placed to bring, isn't it? In terms of talking to policymakers and decision makers in our borough about actually what does our sector need in order to kind of maximise the impact that we can have around environmental stuff. And so, it sounds like there's an invitation there then to connect with you if that sounds important or relevant for anybody. And I think there's another bit as well around, maybe you're not motivated by the sort of the moral element of environmental impacts, and that's fine. We're all driven by different things, but just from a business perspective, actually connecting with some of this stuff makes business sense.
Yeah, it does. It can reduce your costs
massively. Like I worked on a piece of research a little while ago, and our byline was save money, save the planet. And actually lots of positive environmental changes are good business decisions, actually.
Yeah.
So there's loads of different reasons why you might get
Yeah.
involved, aren't there?
And I'm really glad to have the opportunity to kind of put that why across, if you like, because if hopefully you'll have seen, what I'm trying to share far and wide. We've got a Facebook site, Instagram, Eco Toolkit is what we're calling it.
Yeah.
And there'll be some messaging going out through Bolton CVS and Proper Good. So please, you won't miss it, because just trying to get it out everywhere. Yeah.
Get on the end of this.
There's a survey that's been the starting point for this, that's both helping us to establish a baseline of information about where people are at, but also an opportunity for you to say as a sector what you need and what so that we can try and address those needs, and to just basically sign up so that we know that you're interested. The nice thing about this project is that there is a budget for engagement, so you'll be recompensed for your time. But please do fill out that survey, because that's the thing that's going to give us sort of open the door to making sure this opportunity is right. But there'll be training, there'll be practical tools that you can use, and there'll be case study examples. Our first partnership will be nicely with Justicia, who were on the last podcast for Proper Good. So we're having chats about how can we share those correlations between fair trade and sustainability and bring all that together. There's lots of stuff about do this, get involved in this, but I think that the why around this is what we've just said, really. And I'm glad to have the chance to sort of say this isn't just about ticking an environmental box. There's some really, really good reasons to get involved in it. And it's a massive part of social value as well. And as you say, it's underlooked. It's the bit that people go, I'm not really sure how to do that. Is it just, let's just get a policy off ChatGPT or whatever? But no, let's make it meaningful. And if you're going to do it, let's make it meaningful and leave a real change in Bolton, make it a cleaner, greener, nicer place to live. With all those co-benefits around health, as well as what's good for the planet. So I feel like this is an opportunity that we've got for a year to develop this, and a legacy that we'll leave behind in terms of the toolkit. But please do get involved, and let's try and make the most of this opportunity.
I love it. And I think all the way through this conversation there's been a really key theme of kind of you being able to take some of this quite nebulous stuff, the big words that happen and you don't quite, and just simplify it and bring it down to actually something that's proportionate, realistic, tangible, feels accessible and meaningful. And I think that's kind of the key takeaway, isn't it, across social impact, social value and this environmental stuff. Everybody watching this will already be doing amazing work. It's just about kind of finding the ways to tell the story, storytelling, and that's a huge part of what we do, and we all are aiming to get better at in this there. Hence this podcast. Tell some stories. So we're kind of at the end of our time now, but I always ask people these two questions, and I don't know whether they're pointless questions, but I'm going to keep asking them. And the first one is kind of for everybody working in this sector, doing the kind of work that we do, sometimes it can be challenging. We're often faced with, some of the bigger, meatier issues of the world, and that could be hard. And so I always ask people, who or what inspires you to keep doing the work that you're doing? Like, what are you tapping into at the minute to fill you up?
Well, this is a really cheesy answer, I think, but it's true. I tap into the organisations that I come in contact with all the time, because I see their passion and their energy. And if I'm ever feeling a bit flat, then I'll know that it's because I've been in my dining room on my own for too long, and I've needed to just, as soon as I maybe go and do a drop-in at the library or deliver a training session, and I just see the light in people's eyes when they talk about the work they do and why they do it, and I'm fired up to help them to do the best that they can do for the people, to deliver on their mission. So that's always the thing that gives me the most energy. So I guess that inspires me.
Yeah, and that's not cheesy at all. I feel exactly the same. When you've had too many days on your computer, don't you? So you need to just go out, and some people are with you entirely. And then the other thing that I ask is kind of if you had one message to give, be it to social enterprise organisations or policymakers and decision makers in our town, or even both. You can do both if you want. Like, what would you, if you wanted to give people one thing, what would it be? What would be the thing that you would say?
Oh gosh, I don't think I had anything prepared for this answer, so I'd forgotten about that one. But I think don't get too bogged down in the bureaucracy of life, like that. From someone who came from like the public sector, meeting after meeting, like servicing structures and systems, and you forget why we're doing this. So I think that would be my message, actually, would be to say, remember why we're doing this, and that simplicity of the good thing that we're all trying to achieve for a better place for people to live in, for Bolton to be a better town. Don't lose sight of that. Because then we're all kind of pulling in the same direction.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well done, Brain. That was a great, fantastic. Thank you. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to chat to you. Thanks so much. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge. If any of this has resonated with you in any way, and if you'd like to explore your social impact and social value as an organisation, if you'd like to have a conversation with Karen about any of that, if you'd like to tap into the Eco Toolkit, you can access all of that by getting in touch with Proper Good, and our email address will be on the end of this podcast, as will Karen's, if you want to get in touch with Karen directly. And this is a big part of the work that we're trying to do through Proper Good. So if there's anything's resonated with you at all, then get in touch and we'll have a chat.